Hello, welcome to the second Mobile X podcast where Reminex and I interview Cerebro. Now, this is a short segment of a longer podcast that was almost an hour long. Links to the description going to be to the place where if you want to download the full entire interview. Here we go. Something that's been a hot topic. We're going to get to the hot topic. Something that... Yeah, here we go. Are you ready for the hot topic, the hot seat? No, we're going to...
Sure.
So, there was an event that I want to say that at tops 3 people liked that I interacted with, and I can't, maybe at least 100 people I engaged with did not like the tone, the theme, the messaging, the pre-information in the blog post about the details of it, and what we're talking about was the Thanosgiving event. And rather than like saying, whether or not you think it was good or bad, but is there a process for the team to evaluate whether or not the community, because I know that developers are very much number-based people, and how do you put a number to whether or not the community liked it or not? But is there a process for evaluating whether an event was successful or well-received, and then is this even something that's even factored for future events?
Yes, and yes. It's, feedback is, I know this sounds like, it sounds trite, but it's really true. The feedback is important, right? So I've mentioned this in a previous interview before, and I think it was taken the wrong way, which is that, I literally, we can't be everywhere, right? Like I can't every day be on Reddit, Discord, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube messaging, mobile, your Twitch streams. I literally can't be in all those places simultaneously every day, right? Nobody can. So we have tools that help for us to collect all of that feedback. Okay. Now, people took it to mean like, oh, that means I don't spend any time there at all. No, that's not true. I do spend a good amount of time. I think mobile, you can attest to this, that you see me in your chat quite often.
Yeah, you're there a lot.
And one of the ways in which I do collect feedback manually is because we don't really have the ability right now to, scrape all of the comments that are in your chat. I absolutely will grab screenshots. So, especially when you're reading the blog, I like to go and I'll go to yours or I'll go to Rem's, Twitch stream, and I'll see what the feedback is in your chats, like in real time. And then I'll grab some screenshots in which I will share that feedback with the team on Monday. Mm-hmm. Every Monday, I sit down with the leadership of the game team and I give feedback directly. So yes, numbers wise, we have tools that help with that in order to try and get and try and aggregate everyone's feedback.
Can I ask what kind of feedback you gave to the team about the Thanosgiving event? Because that's the hot topic right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, there were some things that it's not even worth discussing that were just objectively wrong. Like some things that said like 0% drop rate, like that was just wrong. Like we can't pretend that was right? There were things that, I think are absolutely, there's room for improvement. And there were some things that the things that touch different areas that could have been, communicated better ahead of time. One of the things I think that we didn't communicate as well enough was the opening of the orbs, right? Because those were not really intended to be the prizes. It was, you open the orbs to get the prizes, but the perception was that the orbs were the prizes. Also, considering this was the first time that we had done that type of thing, you can't always account for how people feel when they're doing things, right? Like a lot of times when I get feedback or when you guys get feedback, right? I see this too. It's, well, this is how I felt doing the thing. And you won't know how necessarily, you try to anticipate, but you won't always know how people feel about doing the thing until they've done it. Now, believe me, people let us know how they felt about that.
Okay.
We now know.
Well, I think that's what we wanted to hear.
Qualitatively, right? Qualitatively, the sentiment. We now know how people felt about opening the orbs. Right? I promise you that. I think in a nutshell, there were definitely a lot of learnings from that event.
Yeah, and I think I know that I see the community feedback changing some of the things inside the game. I really can see some of it, and I think when mistakes happen, I see that there's an overall effort to correct it over time. But I think another thing that a lot of times I hear is why isn't there an immediate response from Cerebro when something goes wrong, or and why isn't there why isn't this happening, and why isn't there how come it takes so long to have a solution? And I don't know if you want to speak to that. It's probably something I think you alluded to one time on Reddit, but.
So the first thing that I would do is I would refer back to what I said before, in that, the weekly blog is where we try to include most of that type of information, because we want as many of our players to take advantage of that information as possible.
Right.
We do the inbox messages every week, pointing people to that. It's why we make sure that we do it at the exact same time and day every single week. That was one of the things that, when I first started here, I was like, this is what we have to do. This has to be a rigid schedule, right? Just like you guys that stream, people need to know that you're going to be there at certain times or certain days to form the habit. So that's straight up one of the main things right there is information is going to be included in blogs. Second, rarely do we have things that need to be addressed that require only one or two people's input. It's a collaboration. It's a collaborative team. So we have to try and get together and because usually whatever changes we make will have knock-on effects. One of the things also is text is devoid of tone, and a lot of times when I write things or when anyone writes things, and people read it, it's like, if you don't know that person, you assign your own tone to it, not necessarily the tone that I used in my head when I was writing it. And I've noticed that a lot with things like my posts, especially on Reddit. They get downvoted a lot because I think people, it's not read with the same tone in which I wrote it with. So I've really tried to mitigate that by including more of that information in the blogs, which have a very specific informational tone, or in things like Strike Time, where I can talk and you can hear my tone, or in things like this, like in this interviews right here, where again you can hear the tone that I'm assigning to things. Which is why you have to include emojis with everything now, because you don't know necessarily what tone. So they could be sincere, they could be completely dripping with sarcasm. You don't know unless somebody attaches an emoji to it. Mm-hmm. And time's relative. We, especially if there are like really significant problems, like if something just straight up does not work, we try to respond within an hour or two, right? If it's really important, we will what's called red badging. You guys know it's just a little red circle. We'll red badge that community tab. We'll red badge it and say, hey, there's an important thing on Twitter that we just posted. Go check it out. Again, with the intention, like most of the communications, we're trying to think globally here, right? We're trying to have as many people take advantage of information as possible. There's only so many people that are going to read a response, a single line response in Discord general chat. Like it's going to be gone from view in a few minutes anyway. So I enjoy that. I know there's value in it. I love doing it, but I have to try and accommodate Spock, right? The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. I'm trying to address the needs of the many.
Yeah, I think that's missed a lot of it too. So I think and so I think if we wanted to compare two releases, right, Shang-Chi versus Deathpool, I feel like Shang-Chi felt like it took a little longer to resolve, but Deathpool, the communication was there. We knew what to expect. You guys said the next patch, the passive will be operating on her. On her turn, and so I felt like there was a learning from that, and I think that's I think if you're actively learning from these, but Shang-Chi was kind of a unique situation, as far as the how he came out. So I think people wanted this magic wand, because there's once people bought him and were expecting him to work a certain way, you kind of had to honor that. So
I mean, it's a tough situation, right? Like we're definitely trying to we don't want to misrepresent anything. Again, we're always trying to put out accurate information, right? Like if anyone's wondering, like, I don't know, maybe they were purposely trying to like trick us or something. When it comes to stuff like the blog, no, we're not trying to trick anybody. That is not the intention. Think about this even from a business perspective, right? That only works once, right? To trick somebody one time, because then they're never going to listen to you going again forward ever. Which that's counter to just the straight up business model in the game, which is that we want to give people a reason to play the game every day, to have fun in the game every day. And they're not going to do that if we're trying to trick them, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So it's an antithetical to, even if you just think about the game from a business perspective.
So there's no master.
It's antithetical to that.
There's no master plan. There's no master plan to trick the players to doing things. Is what you're saying? No, we have to get this thing that you guys. We have to get this conspiracy theory idea that you guys are actively doing things a certain way to trick us or deceive us, and it's just like I don't know. I don't think that's happening at all. Sometimes I think sometimes more often than not, it's an oversight rather than some sort of malice intent.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. Like, if we want the people playing the game today to still be playing next month, 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, like you don't do that by trying to intentionally deceive people, right? Like it doesn't work that way. It might work that way with box copies. Like when they come out with a new Call of Duty every year, it's like, sure, they want to try and get as many, positive reviews as possible at the beginning, try and suppress all the negativity because they're going to make most of their money for the first 2 to 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. And then after that, it doesn't matter because their business model is to sell the game in the first 2 weeks.
Right.
That's not our business model.
Yeah, it only works if that works. It only works for so long, and that's the idea. But I think the idea that deception is the foundation of your like how you like change our behaviors. I think you and I had this conversation probably about a year ago that realistically it's ramping up the fun to kind of make you want to play the game, not being deceived or tricked or feel like you're missing out. It's just having fun. So I know that's a big deal for you, and we talked a little bit about this earlier. You said it. You said you take a lot of responsibility when the community's upset and try to earnestly wear it on your wear that hat. Do you feel like there's been any moment where you were just like, oh man, just here we go. Let's see. I'm ready. I'm ready for I'm ready for what's about to happen. Was there any moment you wish you were that responsibility was like, oh, I just want to take put the comms down for a few minutes, go pace around the office. Was there anything that was like that you felt was that big impact?
There have been times where I've done the writing the letter, but then reading it back and choosing not to send it.
Yeah.
It's like you get your thoughts down, on the notepad, and then you look back and you're like, and you just have to evaluate and be like, well, is this actually productive in any way? right? Like, is this going to make anything better, or is this, me just venting? And there's certainly been some times like that, where I've been like, you know what, probably not going to actually affect any positive change if I send this message.
And I think that's a big deal. I think that's something that we all can learn from, right? Especially when you're sending a message in DMs to your community manager. Just not that I'm speaking to anybody in particular, but I think that, write it down. Feel like, are you going to actually affect anything before you hit that enter button? Do that in your community interactions. I think you'll probably it's a life lesson brought to you by Cerebro here that you can carry forward in life. No, but I think people just in our conversations, you're like, yeah, I'm on it. I get it. This is part of the job. I'm on it. And I think, the people don't realize how big of a deal, like for me specifically, but I think for the whole community, having dates in the blog, we fought for that for so long, and you got it for us. I mean, people might think that it's a small thing, but when people, your people are back at work, interacting with their families, they now have a date to kind of when things are to be expected. And that's not something that developers like to give up very easily.
In a live operations environment, yes, I mean, you're correct. Like, right, I've been working on free to play games for close to a decade now, and yeah, it's not easy to when you have people that value, that kind of that flexibility of being able to pivot when necessary. As soon as you put a date out there, you no longer have that flexibility. So, you have to give those people a good reason to do so, right? It's one of the first pieces of pushback, right? When you say like, hey, can we commit to doing this at this date? You're now locking them into it. So, and you're like, they'll come back with, well, how is that a benefit, right? Like, what if we need to change things? Like, it seems to me to be more of a benefit to not commit to the date. And then, because like if technical difficulty happens, or, we didn't realize that this other thing was going on at the same time, or, whatever, it's best to not commit. So you have to, lay it out there in very certain terms as to why. But that it also speaks to the team's willingness to do that, right? Like they were willing to be flexible in things like committing to dates, and we try to commit to as many dates as possible. Where it's not going to happen with everything. But there's always room for improvement, right? We're always trying to improve our lines of communication. We're not just complacent and saying like, it's fine as is. We always want to look to make things better.
Yeah, so stay tuned. This is the second episode of the Mobile X podcast, and this is going to happen every weekly, and it's going to be published everywhere that podcasts are published. And so if you want to get more information with developer insights, be sure to subscribe to whatever podcast you subscribe and get your subscriptions fund. Anything you want to say before we go, Reminex?
That's it.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching and keep on gaming.